the City Club of Portland, Oregon's most respected public forum. The City Club was founded in 1915 as a civic research organization. Today, its members are 2,000 men and women who share a common interest in the quality of life and government in the Portland metropolitan community. The City Club meets on Fridays at noon in downtown Portland to present speakers selected for their distinction in specialized fields, the knowledge of specific issues, and the freshness and vitality of their ideas. Today's speaker will be Dr. Karl Menninger, speaking on the criminal injustice system. And now, the club's presiding officer will introduce today's speaker.
Karl Menninger, Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Menninger Foundation and of the Villages, Inc. Dr. Menninger is a world-honored psychiatrist, author, and teacher. Graduate of Harvard Medical School, Karl Menninger and his father Charles co-founded the Menninger Clinic in Topeka, Kansas in 1920. 6 years later, were joined by Karl's younger brother William. In 1941, Dr. Menninger established the Menninger Foundation, devoted to the purposes of research, learning, and public education in psychiatry. At the close of World War II, he was instrumental in founding the Winter Veterans Administration Hospital, also in Topeka. This institution functioned not only as a mental hospital, but centered the largest psychiatric training program in the world. Over the past 5 decades, Dr. Menninger has written a dozen books. He holds 13 honorary degrees and has received more than 24 awards and honors from professional, scientific, and humanitarian organizations. These achievements reflect a lifetime of intellectual diversity with interest ranging from psychiatry, medicine, mental health, and prison reform to music, archaeology, and art, conservation, ecology, and the American Indian. The occasion today is a special one for the City Club and the City of Portland. Dr. Menninger is visiting our city to celebrate the dedication of Holiday Park Hospital's new neuropsychiatric center, and also has stayed to speak with us. Simultaneously, and almost at this exact hour, he is receiving this nation's single highest civilian award. In ceremonies currently underway at the White House, 3 o'clock Eastern Time, President Jimmy Carter is bestowing the Medal of Freedom to Dr. Karl. His nephew, Dr. Roy Menninger, is accepting the award. I'd like to read the citation reads as follows. Karl Menninger has taught us much about ourselves and our behavior. An acute observer and social critic, he has put into action what he has put onto paper. As an author and doctor, his works range from popular written accounts of psychiatry to studies done in his own hospital, from creating homes for parentless children to reforming the penal system. With the wisdom of his years, he truly does represent the ideas of another generation, one of the future rather than the past. It is with great pleasure that I introduce our newest Medal of Freedom recipient, Dr. Karl Menninger, and his topic, our criminal injustice system.
Members of the very dignified, very famous, very progressive, and modern City Club. I judge from what is before me that I'm going to be heard in 8 or 10 foreign countries, probably. But I also gather from what's above me that I won't be able to see any of it today, except the 2 or 3 in the front row here, who remind me that there are more behind. Mrs. Menninger and Mrs. Fisher and I came to Oregon with a great deal of joy and anticipation. We haven't been here many times, a few times, but I always like to come back because it's one of the states in which the beauty, the natural beauty, for a time threatened, actually began to improve after the philosophy of beauty appreciation changed some 20 or 30 years ago. And I was wide-eyed and bright-eyed and cheered by what I saw and what I see in this anything but primitive, anything but Wild West city. This cultivated, this cultured, this civilized city. In one way, however, I became somewhat sad-eyed because I saw that you hadn't made any more progress than most other states in what to do with the people you don't like the behavior of. The question of what to do with people who haven't achieved much, except by methods that we don't prove. If they have achieved much, never mind their methods. But if they haven't achieved, but if they haven't done much with it, then they're still on our hands. And if the state hospital won't take them in as being kind of crazy, or an adjoining state won't take them in as surplus labor or something else, we say, well, we got to take care of them. And we're kind of angry about it. We're a little resentful about it. They say, there go our taxes. No wonder we have inflation. We've got to spend so much money on people that don't belong to the club and don't belong to our church and don't belong to our neighborhood. They're a nuisance. Of course, we have an idea from reading the papers that these people are increasing in numbers. Crime is on the up. There are more crimes being committed. Crime waves, this, that, and the other upon us. I read this morning that somebody in Washington is going to crack down on crime. I've always wondered how that was done. I've heard more of these cracker threats in my lifetime. I never saw any cracking happen. Well, it has happened. Didn't the legislature double the sentence for forging checks? Well, I'm glad they did. That don't comfort me very much. I don't take bad checks. Well, as a matter of fact, if the newspapers are awfully disappointed to hear me say this, the fact of the matter is that while it's true that the number of crimes is greater, it's also true that the number of people that commit them is greater. And actually, the criminal propensity gratification of people, your chances, let's say, of committing a nice, pleasant, unpleasant, disagreeable crime are not as good as they used to be. murder used to be a great deal more frequent in proportion to the population than it is now. The rate of murder per potential murderer keeps falling, but there are more people to divide it up. So the occurrence of murder increases, just as we increase. Portland is a bigger city than when I was here before, and I expect you have more murders, but you don't have as many more murders as you would if the rate was not falling. Now, of course, you say, well, I don't care what the rate is, I just don't want any murders at all. I want to see, we don't want any, I don't want my house burglarized. Mrs. Menninger and I have been burglarized. We've been partially kidnapped. We've had lots of unpleasant occurrences with these misdirected citizens. But this isn't a matter of personal vengeance or on anybody, on part of most of it. It's a kind of generalized versions. People shouldn't do that. Well, you and I agree. And some people say, well, they should do it because there's nothing left for us to do. You won't give us jobs, or you don't give us enough money, or we don't have enough money. You allow inflation to inflate, and we suffer for it. And so we're going to take our kind of vengeance. All right, says we. All right, says the state of Oregon. All right, says the city of Portland. We'll take our revenge on you. And I hear that Portland has some ambitions to have a very good place to do this revenging and keeping people locked up in a cage for a while. Whenever I think about this, I recall how it started. It was all started, you see, by a psychiatrist. Really, you don't believe that. He was also a member of the church I belonged to. That has to be faced. He was also a signer of the Declaration of Independence, which is a pretty good thing for him to do. Dr. Benjamin Rush was one of a group of Philadelphians who was a little bothered by some of the public spectacles. I refer to, if any of you have read some of Michener's fanciful historical novels, perhaps you've read Chesapeake. I'm being attacked. Who's here from? Anybody here from Norfolk?
No one from Norfolk.
There's something back of that. If any of you read Michener's novel, that one in particular describes some of the punishments that were administered by the court to citizens of the town who broke the law. Now, one of the law is that you must not be a Quaker. And we're very hard on those people who criminally and viciously persisted in a stupid and antisocial belief like the Quakers was. And they got public beatings in the nude, I might say, male and female. Michener describes some of these scenes and describes how much the public enjoyed it. When they were not beaten, they were put in stocks where people could throw things at them, which was even more gratifying to the public. Now, these people were not rapists. They were not hold-up men. These were real criminals. These were people that persisted in wrong beliefs, or they were people who at first, who were not loyal to the king, and later who were loyal to the king. These were people who didn't pay their tobacco tax. The taxes due on their sale. Well, the description of the public dunkings, when I heard that people used to be burned for letters like T, thief, and A, adulterer, were burned in their cheeks, I was horrified, but I never thought dunking would be so terrible. After all, it must be something like a diving into a pool. Well, I underestimated it. It must have been a great spectacle, because they tied the woman, it was more often a woman than a man, they tied her on the end of the plank that they then tilted into the water. And then after she was underwater, they left her there a little while. So she would strangle and splutter and make a great display. Well, this is very amusing. If you've ever watched this amusing spectacle, you'd see that there were other people around clapping and shrieking and whistling and making obscene remarks and so forth. Benjamin Rush, who was a psychiatrist in Philadelphia, said this is no way to treat fellow citizens, even if they are sinners, even if they are criminals and don't pay their tobacco tax and say unpleasant things about the king. This is no way to treat people, no way to entertain the public by punishments that gratify the sense of guilt of somebody other than the prisoner. Instead, he said, and Benjamin Franklin joined him, we ought to give these people an opportunity to sit in quiet, but in custody, and reflect that this is sin. This is wrong. This is not good for the, what was called, not Commonwealth, but what was Pennsylvania? It wasn't called a state. What was it?
Commonwealth.
Commonwealth. This isn't good for the Commonwealth. This isn't good for the community. We shouldn't expose our public, lustful as they may be for a little revenge and a little violence. We shouldn't let them have this pleasure. And we should let these willful and unfortunate miscreants sit in quietude for a few days and think over what they've done and perhaps read the Bible and reflect. And a group of his fellow citizens said, what you say makes sense, Brother Dr. Rush, and we'll join you. And the committee of the leading citizens, you might say, no doubt it was like the Portland Club of Philadelphia, got together and persuaded the city fathers to give up these barbarities and put these people in quiet places where they could think. And this was the beginning of what became the Walnut Street Jail, upon which jails and prisons for the purpose of punishing people began. Because while the founders did not talk about punishment, they did talk about penance. They did talk about penitence. Well, this was such a convenient method. It was so much more convenient than getting out all the bloody instruments of punishment to simply put a person in a room, in a secret place, and keep him there until you got ready to release him. The whole idea of prisons and jails started. Now, some of you who are lawyers or others interested in penology know how this spread up into New York and other states in the East, and how it developed gradually, how Dorothea Dix raised a national hullabaloo about it, going from state to state, saying you've got no right to put mentally sick people in there and treat them as if you had as if you had a right to imprison them and punish them by custody and starvation and bars and cold beds and so forth. Dorothea Dix went across, Dorothea Yeah, Dix went across the country and persuaded the states to put up hospitals. They were called hospitals. Later that was ridiculed. What do you mean hospital? You mean those storage bins that you put the... Well, it was better than keeping Uncle Jimmy out in the hog pen or in the cow barn. It's better than keeping Aunt Matilda in the attic. We put them now in the state hospital. Well, that's not a hospital. That's a lockup. That's all kinds of things that you know it was. Finally, it was called attacked again. I think I did it. It was finally called a snake pit. Then came the great revolution in the way we treated people. The public said, we don't want mentally sick people punished in any way because they haven't done anything. Well, sometimes they have done something. Well, we don't want them punished anyway. We want them cured. We want them treated. We want them to... Why? Why do you want them? Well, because we want them to change. Well, what about the prisoners who have done something reprehensible? Well, we want them to change too. But you don't treat them as if you did. You don't act in the same way as you do toward these other people who are crazy. And so a great division developed and still exists between the way we treat people that we think we understand and the people, and we know they ought to be punished because they're like us, and the people whom we don't understand because we don't think they ought to be punished because we can't understand what they do, and therefore you shouldn't blame them. Now this division between the people we understood and took a whack at, and the people we didn't understand and let the psychiatrists take a whack at, have divided the custodial population of the United States, which is a large one. The evil part of it, the thing that I'm tempted to do in two directions here, and conscious of my time limits, I won't talk about what happened to the ones that the psychiatrists were put in charge of. Now you say, no, talk about the ones the lawyers were put in charge of. We've all got it in for the lawyers. Only some of us are mad at psychiatrists. Well, why didn't the lawyers do a better job? Well, partly because of you. You've got other things for the lawyers to do it, and they like to do it better than they do taking care of difficult people and trying to know what to do with the ones that have to be detained. Now, people have to be detained, but they don't have to be detained in pig pens. They don't have to be detained in workshops. They don't have to be detained in places that are cruel, that are inhumane. Just being penned up is inhumane in a way. Try going to your bathroom and depriving yourself of all reading material and all pictures, all sounds from outside, maybe a great deal of noise in which you're not interested. Try staying in your bathroom constantly without going out for air, without going out for a walk, without going out for anything. Now crowd 2 or 3 more people in the bathroom with you, and you have a picture which is typical of many jails. Somebody will come and let you out of the bathroom for 30 minutes, and you may walk somewhere and do something. Perhaps you can take a cold shower if you can get in and out quick enough. Perhaps you can do something like this. But in the main, we haven't got time or money to provide you with the opportunity, after all, to do these other things. You're in that bathroom for a reason. Well, you say, I don't care what the reason is, I hate it, and I hate you, and let me out of here, and I'll get my revenge. And there are few prisoners that don't leave the machinery that we have set up in the name of justice. God save the world. There are few people who leave jails and prisons without a determination to get back at us. I know a great many prisoners. I know a great many hostile, angry men. I know men who consider that they were mistreated, whether you do or not. I know a good many of these men who will go further and say, life is always that way. I began being slammed around by my father. I began life in a home where my mother was kicked if she didn't work and kicked if she did, try and keep things together, or perhaps even took a few kicks at me. I lived in a home where I was beaten daily, weekly, whatever. I vowed as a child that if I ever got older, I would make other people do some of the suffering. Nearly all prisoners come from what you and I might call the lower walks of life. You know that you, in this particular state, I'm told, for example, you have the highest percentage, I think I was told this, you have the highest percentage of blacks in prison in this state of any state. Isn't that correct? You know, well, you have a very high percentage. You don't have so many blacks, but you have a high percentage in prison.
First last year, we're only second this year.
What's that?
First last year, second this year.
Oh, you're second. I apologize. Is North Carolina third yet? I asked somebody, said, who is third? Is it North Carolina or Florida? It's one of the southeastern states.
I'd have to check. I didn't know. Washington's number one right now.
Well, that's no place for a civilized, progressive, stars in their eyes state like this to be. You don't deserve to be at the bottom of the list in that regard, or at the top of the list according as you look at it, when you're doing so well in so many other things. You've got such wonderful resources. You've got such alert, progressive, as highly aspiring people. I read your paper, the whole freshness of the tone of your papers, of yours, things I hear said around here. I can see why you were afraid that, I heard once that somebody in your state was afraid if people would find out how nice it was out here, that everybody would come out here. Why, they think they might. But you don't make it nicer by having jails that you have to be ashamed of, that you have to point to with humiliation and say, yes, well, we have got kind of a dead jail. I can remember in the days of the snake pits. You know what was the worst state in the Union? In the amount of neglect and unappropriated monies for the care of the mentally ill? My state. We were the 47th or 48th in the Union. There were only 48 then. We were the 48th state. We had the worst conditions. The least attention was paid. Why? The farmers wouldn't like us to spend a lot of money with these crazies. They get once insane, always insane. You got to take care of a lot of nuts. They don't need a lot to eat anyway. They don't need much heat because they don't know it's cold. Well, that's kind of ignorant. In the first place, I don't know if there were any farmers as ignorant as that. And anyway, it didn't represent the intelligent thinking of the majority of people of my state. And I'm proud that within 5 years, with a little determined effort, we got ourselves up in the first place. And they were proud of it. And being proud of it is one of the things that helped do it. They said, for goodness sake, we're a prairie state, we're a bunch of rubes and farmers and people of not the greatest aspirations always, but we had the best care of our patients, better than you did, better than 46 or 7 other states did, and we were proud. There have been many changes since then. We haven't kept that place. One state after another was better than we, and so forth. I don't know where we stand now. We're not at the bottom, but we're not at the top. But we made a lot of improvements, and we were proud of ourselves for doing it. You can do that. You don't have to have the worst record in the United States. Well, you say that's not a bad record. To have a lot of people in jail, we don't. Somebody was saying, some of us are even proud of it. We put them in jail if they don't behave. Other states, what do you think other states do? Well, I'll tell you what other states do and what you do. You let about 9/10 of the offenders remain in society. There are a small proportion of people in jail. I talked to other speakers on this subject, and something the public cannot grasp is that most criminals are never in jail. Most criminals are out here in this audience or that audience and other audiences around the city. They're not in the jail. That's where you have a little collection of some that the police have managed to catch and the lawyers have managed to convict or not to properly defend. How do they think? And I'll tell you what, some of us advocated you have more. I don't think I don't know how, is RUR here? RR?
There's one. There's lawyers in the audience.
Huh?
We have some.
No. Release on recognition.
Yes.
You have it here. Well, now there you've got progress there. More than we have. I don't think we have that. I advocate that there be a lot more of the ROR. That means you go down, you're in caught picking up some lady's purse or something, and you go to the jail. Well, they can't try you right away. Well, they can throw you in jail and say on suspicion, or you can make bail. Give me $500 and say you'll come back and you'll get your money back and you'll go to trial. But you, on the other hand, if the state is progressive enough, like Oregon is, you can say, I promise to come back. I give you my word for it. I'll give you a promissory note that I'll return when you want me, week and Tuesday. All right. That was introduced in New York in New York State to act against the bail scandal, which was there were a whole lot of people making considerable money on the interest that they got from lending money for people to buy their freedom from their own community. You don't realize how many people are in jail, or more so of this kind than used to be, or fewer, I mean, because they are important witnesses. Who says they're important? Who decides what's important? Well, the judge does, or the sheriff does, or the policeman does. People ought not to be in jail, in my opinion, because they are unable to borrow enough money on the spot to give a financial bond that they'll come back the next day. Well, that's one great improvement that you've already got. A lot of states haven't. But there are a lot more. There are a lot of plans where this idleness that's the curse of prisons is counteracted by various kinds of employment, not slave labor, not prison labor, not artificial things of that kind, but opportunities for people to be working and acting in other respects like human beings and like normal citizens. Well, I get a little hysterical and talk about this subject because it seems to me such a tremendous expense. I saw a boy, I serve as a consultant to a diagnostic center where prisoners in my state are all brought before they go to any prison. This fellow that I have in my mind's eye right now had accumulated enough, I think marijuana, but I've forgotten for sure that it was that. But he was a childlike type. He hadn't been out on the road trying to sell it as he should. He sat around his room, and some of his friends came, and they played with it like squeezing clay or something together. And the police came in, arrested them, and they were taken in, and he was accused of being a merchant, and that has a severe penalty in my state. So that means, what does that mean? Well, that means that he's got to be tried, and if he's found guilty, that he's going to be sentenced. Now, let's say he was sentenced, as I recall it, to 5 years. May have been shorter, but that, I'll make my point without being exact on that. He had been supporting his wife and 2 children some way or other. Now, my state decides to put him in jail and then transfer him to the prison. This is going to cost us about $30 or $40 a day for his board and room. In addition to that, the social workers have to go out and get the family and say, now your man's been taken away, we'll have to support you. Well, they said not only that, but this involves his brother. And to make a long story short, I calculated that for us to properly punish this wicked man for playing with pellets of drugs in his room with another boy, to properly punish this rascal is going to cost our state $40,000. Well, we'll have him punished then, and he'll be out of jail, and what do you think he'll be doing? Well, have we changed him? Have we made him less vindictive? Have we made him more creative, more constructive? We have not. My point is that putting people in jail is counterproductive. I heard Ramsey Clark, the Attorney General, say once, jails and prisons make criminals just like Detroit makes automobiles. It's their product. They don't become a real honest-to-goodness criminal till they've been through a jail sentence. After that, they got a reason to be vindictive. Up till then, it may have just been that they were hard up. You remember Jean Valjean was just hungry at the time he stole that loaf of bread in Les Miserables. He was just hungry, and his family was hungry. He stole the bread, he gets sent to the galleys, and he's in the prison for a few years. After that, he had all kinds of reasons, which he fought against, for wanting to get vengeance. I told the group at the hospital that I spoke to, a wonderful new hospital that you've got here, well, I hope you get a wonderful new institute for the care of not unhappy, miserable, sick people, but unhappy, miserable, well people, in the medical sense. I don't think some of these people are sick too, but I'm not appealing to you from the standpoint of their health. I'm appealing to you from the standpoint of your health and your safety. The sooner you get rid of the idea that imprisonment helps people, the sooner you're going to save a lot of money, the sooner you're going to lower your crime rate. The root of the crime is in that prison. At least that's one root of it. Another root of it is the way children get treated. Now, the cruelty to children, the mistreatment of children, which Mrs. Menninger and I have been so interested in the last few years in trying to create villages or group homes where these children who are abused by their parents or who have no parents because the parents are dead or in a hospital or someplace can go and grow up in a family where right and wrong can be taught, where the expectations of other people can be taught and respected, and where education has some status, which it doesn't have in many homes. And what we call our villages, the children that have up until then had nobody to love them and nobody for them to love and nobody to teach them these things, suddenly acquire not a hired foster parent, not simply an arrangement by the state, not a detention home, orphans home, tyrant, but somebody who loves them, somebody who's actually in that business of caring for children and guiding them to school and seeing that they go. Of the last 200 graduates who've been in the villages 4 or 5 years, we know of only 4. We could find only 4 that went to jail. Now you know that 4 out of 200 or 300 adolescent problem children is a pretty low percentage. Not one of these had 250 is what they were. Not a single one of these 250 had gone back to the welfare board and gotten on their lists again as public charges. We think that the right kind of a home means the right kind of a child, means fewer crimes and fewer prisons and fewer jails and less reason for you to be vengeful and less reason for them to be vengeful. Well, you see, this is kind of a old man's philosophy. I've gotten more and more convinced that it's important to not just to treat people. I treated people all my life. I was a doctor. I thought, well, they get this disease some way, to get into this condition some way. It's my duty to try to help them out. I now think it is part of my duty to help them never get in, to help them stay out, and to help my fellow citizens to see that prevention is more important as well as being cheaper. And it is a great desirable thing. We doctors think that treatment is everything. There's something greater, and that's prevention. And prevent what? Prevent the continuation of the cycle of vengeance. You say, turn the other cheek, you mean? You're back to that Sermon on the Mount stuff. Why, nobody takes that seriously. Is that true? Doesn't anybody take that seriously? I think we ought to. I think we ought to plan any jail, any school, any hospital, or any home. If we really care about fellow citizens and their freedom from suffering and our own safety, I think we ought to take this as a kind of an axiom. Turn the other cheek.
We have time for a couple questions, so we'll take
We have time for a couple of short questions in the audience. We will terminate promptly at 1:30, and then Dr. Menninger will be here if someone wants to come up and chat just briefly. First question right in front.
Dr. Menninger, you mentioned prison product being criminals. Would you comment for a moment on how legislators also create criminals?
Yes, the legislators, bless their heart, they got lots of troubles and lots of friends and lots of enemies, but I give the legislators credit for wanting to improve things, but they exist under the misapprehension that imprisonment's going to change things. Now, though most of us, not all of us, but most of us who are interested in the criminal justice system, so-called, think that imprisonment has got to be radically changed. We don't think you can chain people or imprison them and affect any positive result. Imagine trying to train dogs by penning them in a pen or chaining with chains. You've got to work with them. You can't just throw them somewhere. You know how that question tempts me, but I'll...
Stay right here, and I'll get one more. Time for one more question from the audience.
Dr. Menninger, I agree with what you're saying on prevention, but is there any data to substantiate rehabilitation of people who have committed violent crimes to person and property?
What data is there to substantiate rehabilitation of people who have committed serious crimes, dangerous?
Well, I don't want to make the question out to be ridiculous, however much it may seem so to me. Rehabilitation is a fancy word. You know, every one of us has got to be rehabilitated every day. I don't want to make the mistakes I made yesterday. What proof have you that I can be rehabilitated? What method are you going to use to rehabilitate me? I'll tell you, I'll confess, I'll plead guilty. I want to do better than I did. I don't want to do certain things anymore. What proof have you got that you could be rehabilitated? You see, when I got first into psychiatry, the idea was, once insane, always insane. Crazy people don't get well. Well, what are you talking about putting them in a hospital for? I came to Portland because of a place where you are putting people in and seeing them get well, who were 50 years ago were considered hopeless. Why waste your money and your time putting them in a medical establishment and so forth and so on? And so people say now, what proof you got you're going to rehabilitate any of these sons of guns that have done wicked things? Of course they've done wicked things. So have you. So have I. Of course those mentally ill people have done and think and thought and done wrong things. But their personalities can be given other treatment than punishment. And so can yours, and so can prisoners. Those are human beings.
Thank you very much. We are deeply grateful to our new Medal of Freedom recipient, Dr. Menninger. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned. That was very, very good. Thank
City Club meetings are videotaped on Fridays by Liberty Cable Television Incorporated and can be seen regularly on the following Monday at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. over this cable channel. This program is intended for the private use of our viewing audience and may not be used otherwise without the expressed and written permission of the City Club of Portland. Next week, Speaker of the House Hardy Myers and Senate President Fred Hurd will preview the 1981 session of the Oregon Legislature.